Hello and welcome to Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started. Our catalyzing statement is a successful entrepreneur inside of every business. Enjoy this module.
Hello and welcome to this month's module, Legacy. And if you read the description, we want to talk about the mark that you and your business will leave on this planet. And I think too often as business people, we don't think about legacy. And so as we were planning the filming of this module, Patrick asked me, what do you want the objective of this module to be so we could focus on the objective? The undercurrent of all prior modules is usually one main objective that we try to keep alive throughout the module. So in this module, what our objective is, you could write this down if you want, is to change your timeline perspective on how you make decisions today. So here's what I mean. When you make business and personal decisions, I'm talking about important ones. Is your decision-making timeline your lifetime? Is it through your children's lifetimes? Is it like the Japanese do, 100 years out? And you really have to be clear on that, because if you're not, too often in business, people make decisions that will satisfy the requirements of today. Very reactive, bartering to get things done, or making very rash, irrational decisions to get something off their desk quickly. But I think it's very important to at least have in your consciousness this notion of legacy. What do I want my life to bring to the world, and what mark do I want it to leave behind? What do I want my business and the mark of my business to leave behind? What about my business after I'm gone or after my children are gone? Have you thought about it like that? So the bottom line at this point was we wanted to set the tone for this module, because very, very, very rarely do any of us think about legacy. And this module was born by something that Patrick taught me. If you go to patrickgentempo.com, you could see his tombstone. And I saw that about 2 years ago, and it got me thinking, what do I want my tombstone to say? What do I want the quote-unquote tombstone of my business to say? And you really changed my perspective on that, so thank you.
Yeah, at first this might sound like kind of like a woo-woo idealism. Oh, we're here to talk about your legacy and how wonderful it is to be a person of altruistic intentions that wants to do greatness in the world, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not trying to belittle that necessarily. I think that we should think in such terms. But I also think that there's not just the moral side of this, there's also the very practical side of this, the practical side of long-term thinking. One of the things that I always heard Rick say over and over again, before we even started finishing school, that he is committed always to building long-term sustainable businesses. And when he would come in to consult with me in my businesses, he would despise short-term decision-making. He hated range-of-the-moment decisions that just solve the problem temporarily. Basically what our politicians do in government, they kick the can down the road. We got serious problems that we're facing, and rather than starting to think in terms of future generations and considerations that honor them, they basically say, how can we solve the problem today, get some votes today, kick the can down the road, and let somebody else worry about that after we're gone? It's the opposite of this legacy issue. They're leaving a legacy, but it's a bad legacy, because what they're doing is they're mortgaging the future of our children and putting debt on their backs, etc. I'm not trying to get polemic here about politics. I'm just trying to have you understand the difference. Rick has always been, since I've known him, committed to long-term sustainable businesses. Now this ties back to, just to get you into the right frame of reference here, this ties back to a couple of modules ago when we talked about the Superman syndrome. If your business is reliant on you, the Superman, and God forbid you get hit by a truck, What's the legacy of the business? It's over. So just by practicing a lot of these principles that we've been teaching, you are already applying some aspects of legacy and long-term planning to your business. But now we want to bring specific attention to it. Before it's sort of implied, now we want to turn this into an explicit experience for you as a business accelerator. But to understand that we're thinking long-term here, legacy here. In other words, what do you want people to be saying about your business? What impact did it have on your community minimally, on the world maximally, the scale that it's going to have? What do you see after you're done with your business? Maybe your children are going to inherit it. Maybe they're not. Maybe you're going to sell it at a point in time. Who knows? But those thoughts have to start entering your consciousness, and you become a good steward or a proper steward for something that adds value to the world. Basically, ultimately, in the end, a business is about adding value to people's lives. A business should profit when it's adding value to people's lives. And if you have your business doing that, what do you see as the future? What do you see as the legacy? What are you making decisions based on? Today's world especially, I'll say this, that we're so range in the moment. There's so much stimulation. There's so much distraction. There's so much challenge. Things change so quickly. Economies change so quickly. The markets change so quickly that we are many times just stuck in the range of the moment type of thing. How do we move here? How do we zig here, zag there, etc.? But there's a time to take a step back and say, let me contemplate the future and distant future of my enterprise and the legacy that it's going to leave. And as Rick said, the Japanese who have their 100-year look into the future when they're making decisions. Many of you may have heard about the American Indians when they talk about when their councils got together to make decisions, they thought of the impact of the decisions 7 generations ahead of the time that they're making the decision. So where are you in all this? That's what we want to bring to light here. That's what we want to talk about. And I believe that there's not only the moral side of this, but there'll be a very strong practical aspect of this state of consciousness when you approach your business.
There's a very popular story from the book that Jim Collins co-authored called Built to Last. And it's the story of Sony. And Sony has gone on to be a massive, very well-respected company around the world, and they create a lot of electronic products. But when Sony first started, the founder wasn't really sure what kind of products he wanted to make at all. The only thing that was important to him was, number one, that they created an enduring company that lasted 100 years plus, and number two, that they had a set of values. And he would meet with his employees year after year after year and say, what do you want to create that is aligned with these values? So if you read the book Built to Last, it tells you the stories that emanated from Sony. But I believe it was around year 7 or 8 of Sony's existence where they came out with a transistor radio because it fit their values. Could you imagine today starting a business and waiting 7 years before you figure out what it is that you actually sell? But a lot of times enduring companies are values-oriented and purpose-oriented before they're product-oriented. There's a famous story in the book, too, about Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard was unbelievably fanatical about honoring the company's values and didn't so much care, same as Sony, with what products that they were creating, as long as they had an environment that held their values close and made sure that those values were alive and well. So it's very interesting when you look at companies that have lasted a long time, they're enduring enterprises. What do they focus on? I guarantee you that companies that are enduring focus on very different things today and focused on, at the very beginning, very different things than most companies focus on. Most companies tend to be short-term oriented or profit-oriented. And I've always believed and have contended and have mentioned this in the past, that it's so much more important to focus on your balance sheet if you're creating an enduring enterprise than focusing on your top line revenue. Because as we've seen in business, companies that focus on their top line revenue come and go. Companies that focus on the enduring aspect of their business, i.e. their balance sheet, tend to stay around for a long time and tend to be generational. If you're focused on your balance sheet, you probably have more cash. You probably have less debt. You probably take money out of the business less often. You probably pay your employees in a regimented, process-oriented way, and you pay them 5 ways, as we've discussed in prior modules. So legacy is this all-encompassing notion around creating an enduring enterprise. What we also want to talk about in this module is personal legacy and family legacy. One of the things that my wife and I created, and we've mentioned in a prior module, is the family placemat. And it's a way to take a placemat, put it on your kitchen table or dining room table, and have your children read about your family values and your family rules and your vows and different aspects of life and legacy that you want to pass on to your children, like a family crest. My wife and I developed a family crest. Take a look at familyplacemat.com. And I think if you don't take the time now to stop your life and create these things for your children and for your family that live on, it will never happen. It will never, ever happen. I have personally decided that it's going to be extremely hard to pass on my values to my children. So rather than pushing them on them, what I want to do is publish books. And in my published books will be my values, and will push those values through to my children that way. So when they reach an age in life where they're able to read, maybe they'll accept the values or embrace the values or carry the torch for those values. So I think it's incredibly important that all of us, if we want to have a positive legacy, we stop the action, we think about what our personal legacy is, we think about what our business legacy is, and then we put the procedures and processes in place now to make that come alive.
One of the things that you might be thinking right now is, yeah, but my business isn't that important. I mean, it's not like something that is going to change the world or affect the world 7 generations from now or 100 years from now, and I don't think this really applies to me. This is a hugely personal thing. And the whole idea is purpose. What makes a human being different than any other form of animal on the planet is the fact that we can choose a purpose. A dog cannot choose a purpose for its life. If it could, it probably wouldn't live with you. A cow cannot choose a purpose for its life. If it could, there'd be no such thing as McDonald's. So the reality is that you can choose a purpose in your life, and from that purpose comes a legacy. And the bottom line is, if you're in a business that's profitable and it's long-term and sustaining, then you're adding value to people's lives somehow. And there's no moralizing here as far as what the standards have to be and how much value you have to add, and it's not good enough, blah, blah, blah. It's really just a matter of you coming to those conclusions and making them a part of your conscious intention. So with this concept of legacy and your business and your family, this is really, I think, rich insofar as this is an opportunity for the entrepreneur to fully experience and express why they are an entrepreneur. When you're not in your own business, when you are just working for somebody else and you're somebody that's replaceable, that basically maybe you feel like a cog in the machine, that's a horrible place to be. Even if you're an employee, you can still try to find the purpose in what you do and live fully through that. But ultimately, when you are that person that's the risk taker, that is the entrepreneur, that's going to have this crazy business life, but also is going to have a personal life and a family life, and that you're going to have loved ones and children and family and your own personal health and well-being and your spiritual life and your career and your financial life and all these things that are flowing around you. The bottom line is, one of the great pleasures of being an entrepreneur is the fact that you can start to really contemplate in these terms, or in the term of legacy and purpose. And by doing so, it adds richness to your experience as being a business person. So yes, I think to a large degree, business acceleration is a part of legacy when you learn to start thinking in longer terms when you make your decisions, and it will change your decision. Being around Rick in this guidance has really changed how I approach decision making very often. But in addition to that, it also is going to give you what I believe every good entrepreneur deserves: a sense of pride, a sense of self-esteem, and a sense of integrity insofar as that you're a person of significance. That all the pain, all the challenge, all the struggle you've been through to create and grow and be in a business, that you also get the other side of that equation, which is I live a significant life and I can contemplate that and I can have the fulfillment of that as a part of my everyday experience.
When you consider people that you've met in your life that are successful, quote unquote successful, most of the time you'll find that the reason they're successful, either in their family life, in their marriage, or in their business, is because their decision-making timeline is very far out. I have a friend that's got 4 children, and all 4 of his children, even though he doesn't have a lot of money, all 4 have gone to an Ivy League school, and all 4 got very high scores on their SATs, and all 4 got free rides to Ivy League schools. Think about that. He only has 4 children, and all 4 had this outcome. And when his name is Richard, and when I asked him about this, I said, how did you do that? He said, I had a very clear view of them as old citizens of the world. That was his term. And that they were very successful. And I thought having a great education would help them in their life so that they could leave a big mark on the world. And what I'm trying to point out here is the further out you can have your decision-making guidepost in your life, either it's personally or in your business life, if you can go out 100 years like Sony or 7 generations like American Indians, it changes how you make decisions. It also does another thing. It relieves stress. You're not constantly reacting to the fire of the moment. You're thinking long term, so that the short-term fires lose their relevance and lose their significance. I think at this point I'd like to read the definition of the word legacy and really hammer it home for you. I pulled this up on the internet. It says legacy, anything handed down from the past, as from an ancestor or predecessor. So think about your life being handed to your future employees, to your children. Think about your business being handed to a new owner. When you're selling a business or making your business saleable, are you really thinking about the future of your business? So often entrepreneurs think about, how can I get the most from my business? How can I make the most money or sell it for the highest price? But rarely think about legacy. I think it's incredibly important for when somebody sells a business and it goes on to be a much bigger business, they could say for the rest of their life, I founded that business. But often we see entrepreneurs say, yeah, that business went bankrupt after I sold it. I've heard that so many times, and I would say to them, so that makes you proud that you founded a company and it went bankrupt? Or you'll see this in corporate America a lot. Really good CEOs, they look to groom the person that's going to take their spot as their legacy. And they groom for years and years and years. But a lot of CEOs, unfortunately, they want to leave the business and their ego is running the show. So they look to put somebody in place who fails miserably. So they could say, hey, when I ran XYZ company, we were doing really well. And as soon as, Bob or Mary took over, everything went to hell in a handbasket. That is not what legacy is about. Legacy is about creating the seeds of future growth and things to be proud of and things that are significant, whether it's personal or business.
I recognize that we've wandered off the reservation a little bit with this module, but I think this is important. Finishing school is about a culture, and it's a culture that is conscious. It's a culture that not only just wants to learn, what are the tactics for succeeding in business? Teach me this so I can grow my business. Teach me that so I can grow. Of course we want to talk about that. But now we want to get a little bit more back to the why. what's the soul of the entrepreneur? What is the why, the purpose behind all these things that you're learning that drives it? And we had a fairly intense module last month. We got a pretty intense module coming up next month that I really love. But in this particular month, I think, as Rick and I talked about this, and purposefully as far as where it's inserted, we think that's important that you start to think in terms of long-term sustainability in your business, and not just about your run and experience in the business personally, but that to start seeing your business as a child. Like, you have a child that grows up, you care about its future, you care about that child going into the world and doing well without you. I think that that applies to your business also, and when you think in those terms with a child, you raise a healthier child. You don't want to create a child that just depends on you, and then after that you don't care. Same thing is true with your business. When you raise your business, there's a certain amount of years that you're going to be involved, but you want that business, I would think at least, to be healthy, independent of you. And when you start looking at cultures as we've described and how far into the future they start to think when they make decisions, what my hope is, at least out of this module, is that you'll walk away reflective. You'll walk away looking inward a bit rather than outward at your business. And the consequence of this, or the outcome of this, is that you'll start when tomorrow's meetings happens and you have to start making decisions again for your business, that suddenly now there's going to be a different lens that you're looking through, and that you'll make longer term decisions, that you won't be as reactionary as you might have been before you watched this module, and in the end you start to become that wiser person that's more of a sage for the business that can guide it into a future that is everlasting. And I think the concept of that should kind of just get you feeling really kind of solid and fulfilled in what you do every day as compared to distracted and frenetic.
I would be remiss if I didn't admit this, and that is, this module isn't for everybody. But because you've been with us now for a year and a half or more, we think you're ready for it. And what you're ready for is to really start thinking about having a significant business, having a significant life, having a significant reputation, and having a significant family. Here's the thing, and Patrick touched on it. People who have great lives have wisdom. And this is one of those modules, if you really think about it and you internalize it and you start thinking about the legacy that you want to leave behind and you start making decisions from that, you're gaining wisdom. That's how wisdom expresses itself. I also want to point out a movie that I watched recently. It's an old movie. Robin Williams starred in it, and the name of it is Dead Poets Society. And you may recall a scene from the movie where Robin Williams paraded the students. There were young students, they were all boys, it was an all-boys school. And he paraded the students through a plexiglass or a glass case with poets that were dead and long gone, but not forgotten. And their poetry was there, fully expressed, in full view. And he wanted the students to see that their life and the poetry that was about to come out of them would be a legacy of them for future generations. It was very, very powerful. It made me realize that I have the ability to not only think about my own legacy, but teach this to you and others. So I think legacy is so massive and powerful. And if you do have the time, watch Dead Poets Society and watch that scene where he echoes in their ears to think about these poets that are long gone. So that was the basis for the entire movie. Another thing, to put this into more practical terms, is behind the camera is Jimmy Newsom. And Jimmy has been filming these modules from day one. And between takes and cuts, you're watching this compressed, but we actually just took a long break and we had a conversation with Jimmy.
Because as usual, Rick had to go to the restroom.
And It's interesting. He may be thinking, and I gauge him a lot because he's a small business entrepreneur and he's basically a videographer. And he's starting to think about, wow, before I met you guys, I would think about myself as, when can I get my next gig? But now we're making Jimmy, or we're influencing Jimmy to think about the bigger picture and the reason why his company exists and the purpose and legacy. And he's gaining wisdom from being on the other side of the camera. My point in bringing Jimmy up is if we could change the life of a videographer, not that that's small or big or whatever, it's not a size thing, but the fact is any life can be changed from legacy and all of these modules. So please, my request is don't dismiss any of these modules or any of these concepts. Try it on as if you're trying on a suit in a store. Maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't fit, maybe it's not your style, maybe it's, but try it on. Put these things on the ground and see what impact they have on your life. All right, welcome to the application section of the legacy module. Now, this module is a little bit different than prior modules, and the reason is it would be impossible for Patrick and I to come up with an implementation guide for you to implement your legacy. Your legacy is up to you. All we can do is give you some examples and help inspire you to take action in this area. A couple of things that I wanted to share with you are things that my wife and I on a personal side and inside my company have done so that you can put some of this stuff on the ground. But here's something I thought about when it comes to a marriage. The divorce rate in the United States is about 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And I believe that the reason 50% of marriages end in divorce is because very rarely do couples move the timeline of their marriage out far enough. Let me give you an example of what I mean. I was recently at a wedding and two people, they were in their mid-20s, which I thought was way too young for two people to get married. But this couple passed around a book and had people write whatever they wanted in the book. So this was passed on to me from one of my older mentors, and I decided to take the opportunity to write in their diary of their wedding day this little story. It took me about 20 minutes, but I basically communicated to them my marriage and a vision of it when I'm 80 years old, and inspired them to write their vision. So basically what it said was, my wife and I were 88 years old, and my wife is in her 70s, and we're sitting on the mountains in Colorado. It's snowing outside. We're in front of a fireplace. We're sipping tea, and our children and grandchildren are around us. And I created this big story, which I wrote out in their diary, and I encouraged them to write out a vision of their marriage 50 years post, 50 years after. And they called us back about 3 weeks later and they said that was the most powerful part of the diary. And they actually wrote out a several pages long document on their future. Now here's the bottom line of this. If they get into a fight, okay, what happens in a lot of marriages is if the fight is strong enough, the two people are running for the exits. However, if you have a crystal clear picture of the legacy that you want to leave behind, when you have a fight, and it's a really bad fight, you're being pulled by your legacy. You're not being pushed by whatever the current event is that's happening. So having a legacy that's crystal clear that you plan for now is very important. It's the exact same thing in a business. If you and your staff can pick a point in time 100 years hence where you're describing crystal clear what the company is, what it does, what the values of it are, what type of employees it has, what type of clients it has, that will absolutely positively limit the effects of a torpedo that the company takes in the side. And torpedoes come all the time. They come in the form of lawsuits. They come in the form of crazy things that happen in the economy, things that are out of your control. So I think it's vital on the application section you really move out, both on a personal perspective and a business perspective, your decision-making timeline.
Another application I think is a huge opportunity for you, and it's very humanistic in nature as far as enrolling people into the company and having them perform in a new way. This legacy thing has to extend beyond you. You have to see it bigger than you and recognize that other people want a sense of purpose and legacy also. So find those critical stakeholders that are a part of your business, which of course are going to be your key employees, but in addition maybe vendors or other stakeholders that are involved in your business in some way or have an influence on the business. I recommend a retreat. Call it literally a legacy retreat. One of my businesses has this club that are all of literally my highest performing clients who are doing the best things out there, who feel enrolled in what we do and the vision of our company, and that's why they became clients in the first place. And what we do is we get together 4 times a year and we go to work on things that will improve all our businesses and et cetera. But one of the things that we do every year, which is magical, is what we call our legacy retreat. And literally, the last one we did in Napa Valley, California, we all converge into Napa Valley, California. We get together and we spend half the day planning our legacy, who we are as a group, what effect do we want to change in our profession that we love so much? How do we want to see that we are collectively very powerful, and that if we all get on the same page with a common vision for a legacy, that we can make it happen, and how that will give us significance and satisfaction in our life. I think you could do the same thing no matter what kind of a business you're in, is that you plan a retreat, and it's at least an annual retreat. And you as the business leader pull the right people together and sit back and say, I want to talk about one thing through the day or days of this retreat. I want to talk about the legacy that this business is going to leave based on our efforts. I want to find out what our North Star is, what is constantly giving us direction, how we can align with that, so that even though day to day we might have fights with each other, we might have tough days, we might get torpedoed, as Rick talked about, but the bottom line is we always look up to that North Star. We see it together. No matter where we might be in the world, we can look up in the sky and see that same star that gives us direction. So the concept and the construct of legacy, not just for you as the business leader, but for the other people who are putting their life's energy into your business, getting them together to talk about legacy is transformative. Suddenly, they're going to perform on a different level. Suddenly, their why, as far as getting out of bed every day and showing up to perform for your business, is empowered and strengthened in a huge way. And you're also giving to them literally a deeper sense of being. Their soul is shaped. They spend the majority of their lives, like all of us, working. And if we're going to spend all those hours in work, boy, would we like it to mean something on a soulful level to us. So this is one of those things that's, maybe a little bit of that, foo-foo, new agey sounding stuff, but when it really gets down to it, this is of great significance. So I would really recommend, as a practical application of this legacy module, is to get the core people, the important people together on a rhythmic basis, so practice some of those things like rhythms and rituals. Make legacy a rhythm and a ritual in your business. Get people together on the same page with it. Find that North Star together, and you're going to find that your relationships with these people grow. Their relationship to the business grows. They suddenly now have an emotional attachment and a spiritual attachment to your business, and the consequence of that is that it will truly leave the legacy that you had created for it. And to me, you can't buy that satisfaction. You can't buy that significance. I don't care how profitable your company might be, to have that sense of being about what you're doing and do that collectively with a group of people who are enrolled that will stay there long term to see that legacy through. Now you are operating on a level that is a rarefied place that only people who see the true spiritual nature of being an entrepreneur would understand.
And I have to ask you, if you did what Patrick is suggesting, would that increase or decrease the probability of success long term and leverage and simplicity? Of course it would. It would increase that. So all of these modules, as you now know, fit together like a puzzle. I want to add another application that you could put on the ground immediately if you take the time. And that is going to familyplacemat.com and creating a placemat. And on that placemat, having the undercurrent be legacy. We've had many people take the family placemat concept and all of the little pods of information for a family. It could be vacation plans, values, how to discipline your children, family meeting schedules, marriage vows. On mine and my wife's, we have Benjamin Franklin's 13 Virtues, and lots of things like that. You take that same concept and you create it for your business. Many people have done that. What do you want your business to transmit to the employees and to the clients and to the community at large? Imagine having a placemat so whenever your employees are eating lunch, whether it's at their desk or in the lunchroom or however you do it, they're staring at a document that is the legacy document for your company. So there's many ways to communicate this to people, but you have to take the time now, stop what you're doing, time out, and take action. If you keep waiting to write that book, or you keep waiting to create the placemat, or you keep waiting to do the implementation guides on these modules, or you keep waiting to take these modules and embed them into your business, it is never going to happen. You have to take a time out of the action. Just like, this is very hard because Patrick's very, very busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. But for us to stop our lives, create a situation in which we can lay out these modules and film these videos, it is crazy. But I love the Apple commercial about the crazy ones. It's the crazy ones that make things happen in the world. You have to look at yourself as a little bit crazy to go through all these modules and put this stuff on the ground. But I really want to encourage you to do that.
Well, I think to round this off and following up on what Rick just said, because that is one of my favorite ads, that old Apple ad, where they said this: the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. So I'm going to invite you to get crazy, go out, and figure out how you're going to change the world. Thank you for watching this module of Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started.